When I was doing Gunsmoke, Amanda Blake, who was very nearsighted, looked at me and she ran to me and threw her arms around me and gave me a big, wet, deep kiss. And in the middle, she stopped and pulled back. She looked at me and said, oh, I'm sorry, Nicky. I thought you would.
One of the great storytellers of all time, because he's lived longer than most anybody I know. He has stories going way back, and he's going to tell us some of those great stories today. I'm talking about the fabulous actor, Nehemiah Persoff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today I'd like to talk to you about some of your TV westerns, because I know you did 6 episodes of my all-time favorite western, Gunsmoke, with big Jim Arness. And in the episode that I think was your very first one, directed by Mark Rydell, 10 Little Indians, you're the bad guy going up against Jim Arness. How tall was he?
That's a great story. Jim Arness was 6'6", and I was at that time 5'8" or 5'7", not exact. I was supposed to challenge him to a gun duel. And I thought, I'm 5'7", he's 6'6". I'm no challenge to him. The audience would never believe that I was a threat to him. So I went to the director and I said, and he said, go to wardrobe and they'll make you taller. They gave me a pair of shoes that brought me way up to 6 feet. And when I got up on the stage, I looked at Jim and he was 7 feet tall. It turned out the assistant director said to me, Jim heard that I was going to be taller and he didn't want that done, so he put on lifts to be taller, and he was 7 feet.
Well, he was pretty darn tall anyway. And in that episode, Mark Rydell, who of course later directed Duke in The Cowboys and some other fine movies, that was one of his earliest films as a director.
When I was doing Gunsmoke, I came to the stage one day and Amanda Blake, who was very nearsighted, looked at me and she ran to me and threw her arms around me and gave me a big, wet, deep kiss. And in the middle, she stopped and pulled back. She looked at me and said, oh, I'm sorry, Nicky. I thought you were James Mason. At that time, in that period of time, I looked much like James Mason. As a matter of fact, when James Mason met me, first thing he said was, we don't look that much alike, do we? So he was getting it too. Amanda Blake and I were good friends after that. You win some, you lose some.
Well, when Amanda came up and gave you that big kiss, it seems like to me that's the time you should have lapsed into your British accent.
No, I didn't speak with a British accent.
You used many different accents in your Gunsmoke characters. I remember one with Robert Urich. You're his father. You're sheep herders, and part of the ritual to becoming a man in this episode of Gunsmoke was to have a fight with your father.
But I remember Bob Urich well, and when he did a series in Las Vegas later on, I was very happy for him because he was a good man. But as for that particular show, I really don't remember it.
There's another one you did, too, on Gunsmoke, because you did so many, I can understand how you can't remember them. But it was with Tom Skerritt and Tom Simcox. And Tom Simcox had gone to jail taking the blame for his younger brother. You, as the father, resented the older brother, not realizing that it was really Tom Skerritt who was the bad son.
But you know, you're talking about a time when I was doing about 2 TV shows a month. 2 TV shows a month.
And the Gunsmoke, and one of them, you did 1 episode, and then 6 weeks later, you're doing another episode as another character.
Not 6 weeks, but sometimes 2 weeks, and sometimes I'd be overnight. I'd go into a different character. When I did Route 66, when I did the guy that had false teeth and a big nose, a primitive-looking guy. I came home and they called me the next day asking me to come down and do the next show. So it was hard for me to remember. Once the show was over, It was out, so there was room for another show to come in. So if I don't remember them, please forgive me.
No, and you were so busy all the time. You also did some Wagon Train episodes, and I know your cousin James Rosen wrote a book about Wagon Train, and in fact, you wrote an autobiography. In fact, your autobiography, I have it right here.
Absolutely. That was a lot of fun. The thing is that I don't want to go into the book, because if I tell you the stories in the book, nobody will buy the book, and I want people to buy the book.
All right, everybody here, buy this book, The Many Faces of Nehemiah. It's really a terrific read.
Right.
You worked with Robert Horton in a TV movie called Kiowa Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And Salminio, you and Salminio played bad guys in that. I loved Salminio.
Let me tell you something about Robert Horton. I was playing a gypsy there, a guy who told fortunes with tarot cards. And while they were shooting, I was on the side trying out my cards to see if I can work up a routine that I could use in the show. While I was playing with my cards, a few visitors to MGM came in, and the man came over to me and started a conversation. And he asked me, are you a real gypsy or just a make-believe gypsy? Do you really know the tarot cards, and so on? And as he finished that, he started telling me about his daughter who was behind him from the time she was born until she went to college. He told me every detail. Finally, they were about to go, and the daughter came over, and he said, here she is. I'd like you to meet Mr. Persoff. He's a fortune teller. She said, oh, I'd like to hear my fortune. So I told her fortune, because I knew more about her than she did. And they were amazed. The director stopped shooting. Everybody was around listening, and they all thought that I was the real gypsy.
The Dangerous Days of Kiowa Jones, that's the name of that film.
Yes, The Dangerous Days of Kiowa Jones. Thank you.
You were chained together with Salminio. Salminio played a really mean killer in that. What was Sal like?
He was a kid. He was a kid that just happened to be an actor, and he enjoyed it. He was not too complicated. He liked adventures. He liked to have all kinds of stuff. He was a nice guy. You
did a two-part episode on another classic Western, The Big Valley, with Barbara Stanwyck, one of the giants.
Yes. What I learned from her was to be on time. She was a great, very famous actress, but she came 5 minutes before she was needed. She was there ready to go. And I learned that was a very important thing for me to know, because directors and producers like actors who come on time, because they save money on that.
You were hired a lot, so you must have been a prompt person always then.
I was, and also one of the reasons I think that I was used so much was that my average take was about 1.5. Most actors take 2 or 3 takes, and that costs money. So I sort of saved money, and that's, I think, why they...
Well, you're probably right. One of the best directors around today started as an actor, and he only likes to do 1 or 2 takes, and you worked with him on a rawhide, Clint Eastwood.
Yes, Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood, when I went on rawhide, I looked at Clint Eastwood, and I said, like Gary Cooper. He looks just like, he is part of the scene. He's part of it. He doesn't have to act. He just has to be. And he was wonderful until they had a terrible accident. His co-star was drowned in the water there, and the show closed. He found himself without work. He went to Italy, where he met Sergio Leone, and he had the good sense to hire Clint Eastwood.
Well, it made him a superstar.
The rest is history, isn't it?
Those are great. Those are great.
Yeah. Clint Eastwood had quite a career, and one of the reasons was, of course, that he looked so good. Mm-hmm. He really was fortunate, especially for Westerns.
And not just the Westerns, but of course in the Dirty Harry movies and the modern films too.
Yes, sure, yeah.
He's a really an observant director too, and knows what he likes, keeps the same crew with him all the time.
Eli Wallach, who worked with him, used to say that he was probably the most intellectual Westerner that he's ever met.
Really?
Because he knows music, classical and jazz. He knows painting. He knows all kinds of stuff that you don't know. But as a director, you sometimes need to know it. Mm-hmm. And so he's been very successful as a director.
Well, and he also is a big music lover and jazz,
yes,
especially.
That's right. That's true, yes.
Now, I want to talk about another show. It's not a Western, but I loved it. I remember watching it with my father when I was growing up, and you were in the very first episode of the series, The Untouchables. It's the empty chair, and you and Frank Nitti were fighting to take over who was going to control Al Capone's Chicago, and you were Capone's bookkeeper. You were so good in that. What was that like?
Well, I enjoyed working with that very much because Bob Stack, who played the head untouchable,
Elliot Ness,
he had a way of looking down at us gangsters that got me upset. I got riled up. Why does he do that? Who does he think he is? And as a result, my acting there with Bob was very real. And I really hated him when he played. We became friends afterwards. He invited us to his house for dinner several times. But on the set, Bob had such a powerful person. You know, if you look at the film, you'll see he's always looking away. He doesn't want to look us straight in the eye. Why does he want to look me straight in the eye? Who does he think he is? And that used to get me riled up. And it was real.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah.
And, of course, Bob and Rosemary, his wife, they were so charming, and he was a funny guy, Bob Stack was.
Yes, he was. He was. Let me tell you something about the Untouchables, an incident that occurred. We were shooting a scene, Culver City, and as they start the scene, a guy across the way starts his lawnmower. They cut. And they say, "Will you please cut that out?" He said, Sure. And they start the scene again, and his lawnmower started going again. They couldn't work. I was a gangster then with a gun on my shoulder. I walked across the way, and I said to him, "Don't you think that you should let them shoot the film? Why don't you take this out of here?" He said, Sure. He said, Sure. And he took the thing, and he went away, and we shot the film.
Very intimidating. You were in your zone there for that character.
Yeah.
Well, you played Jake Gusak three times on The Untouchables, but you also played other characters too. How versatile. How nice.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
A great show too.
Yeah, that was fun to do. Yeah.
You mentioned to me on the phone about an experience you had early in your career when you were on Broadway in Peter Pan with Boris Karloff.
Yes, one day I came to the theater. You're supposed to come a half hour before curtain so that you have time to dress. I came about 5 minutes before the curtain, and I quickly dressed. My understudy was already ready to go on, and I dressed. Everybody was on pins and needles. And at the end of the show, Boris Karloff, who's a very kind man in contradiction to the parts that he played, he took me into his dressing room and he very kindly said to me, "You know, one thing we never do in a theater is come late, because it's not only you. There are many, many people who depend on you. So you must make it your business to come on time. Come on time. And that was very valuable for me again. These are things that I learned along the way and I picked up.
Well, I've learned a lot from you today, and I want to thank you for taking your time to share your stories with all of us out there who are your fans, and we've been following your career, and we wish you well and safe journey and good health. And I want to thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And before you go, may I ask you to hold up the book again?
Yes. And here it is. Go buy this. What do you want to say about this book, Nehemiah?
It's gotten maybe 7 or 8 reviews so far, and they're all 5 stars, every one of them. And it's very flattering to me, and I feel very good about it. And the more people who read the book, the happier I am, because the more friends I have.
Well, I must say...
Have you read the book, by the way?
I have read the book. I bought it in Williamsburg from Jim Rosen. I read it on the plane and called you up on the phone, and here you are on our show, and I want everybody out there to be buying this book too. If you'd like to buy this book, click on the link below this, and you'll be able to purchase it from Amazon. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Wow.
Thank you. I want you to tell that to my girlfriend when you see her.
Nehemiah, thank you for joining us today. I love hearing your stories, and I look forward to hearing more of them in another episode of A Word on Westerns.